Welcome to Creating Accessible PDFs, presented by Results One LLC. At this time, I'll turn it over to Citlali for the presentation.
Thank you, Lexi. Hi, everyone. My name is Citlali Rioja. I will be presenting today. So I am a Latin person. I go by she, they. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Now, we are going to go through what is really important for accessible PDFs. And thank you, Lexi. First things first, we are going to go for common PDF usage, PDF advantages and disadvantages, because there are many, use of tools to check PDF accessibility, creating a workflow to learn how to approach the process of making a PDF accessible, and then making a PDF accessible. So we're going to go from the basis of it to the reasons to how to actually do it. Next slide, please. So what is an accessible PDF? So an accessible PDF is a document that is universally easy to use and meets established accessibility standards. This can be WCAG, this can be Section 508. It really does depend on what you're authoring for. It does enable most people to view, read, or interact with your document. Now, it is easy to use with assistive technology. This can be screen readers, text-to-speech programs, or braille displays. We are going to go into what needs to be done to make PDFs actually understandable for assistive technology a bit later on. Next slide, please. Why is PDF accessibility so important? So, unlike a sighted user who physically views and reads the PDF and their content, a user with visual impairment or other disabilities such as color blindness, hearing loss, a certain cognitive challenges, relies on tools to read the PDFs. If a PDF is not made accessible, a screen reader does not read as it should. For example, if a PDF is not accessible, a screen reader will not be able to read it at all. It will appear blank, preventing users from fully accessing the information contained in the PDF document. Now, your goal is to make your PDF accessible to as many people as possible. Next slide, please. Common PDF usages. So PDFs usually are technical documents and manuals. Let's say when you buy a TB, you might get an email with a manual or any type of program there. It is for reports, and especially complex layouts, graphs, and charts are usually included in PDFs. It can be forms or any type of printing form or just online delivery forms. It can be for scans, just scanners or other hardware output in PDFs. It can be for print and design industry, which is very comfortable. And it could be large and complex documents that can be published in your websites. So if you have any economic reports that might be too lengthy to be made a web page, a lot of solutions just make it a PDF and upload it to the website so it can be accessible through there. Next slide, please. The most common PDF accessibility barriers. Now, there is a lack of ability in navigating the document to find what is needed. So a lot of people don't really use either an index or bookmarks. So there is an issue finding what you want. There is the incomprehensible tables. So tables that cannot be read at all. There is text not ordered correctly or not spaced properly. So we get a wall of text effect. There is a lot of words that might be unintelligible or jumbled together. There is no alt text for images, charts, or graphs. There is an inability to interact with fillable forms, which defeats the purpose of them. And some scanned documents that have no content and must be OCR'd, resulting in inaccessible documents and documents having no structure at all. Next slide, please. So PDF advantages and disadvantages. We're going to start with the advantages. Number one, PDFs are designed to be structured in such a way that allows remediation to be simple. So from a structural level, without any excessive need to make them visually change. So if you have any issues, if your PDF is not accessible, but it looks good, you're happy with how it looks, chances are you don't really have to change that much. Number two, the ease of modification for PDF, for navigation within the PDFs. So again, navigation can be modified through a background type of device in order for you to make it accessible. You won't have to make a lot of visual changes. Number three, if the source document you have is accessible, then making the resulting PDF accessible is so much easier. So if you start being accessible, if you start thinking about accessibility from the authoring system, your PDF will be much easier to handle. Now let's go for disadvantages. Number one, security can be a negative from an accessibility point of view. A secure PDF might interfere with screen readers and automated testers. So a lot of automated testers will flag your PDF as not accessible if it is secured. However, we also recommend a manual test. So a person with a disability might be able to test it and might be able to see if a screen reader can handle it. Number two, PDFs can be composed solely of images, but an image still requires alternative text. And without the alternative text, a lot of PDFs are just empty. Next slide, please. We're going to get into making a PDF accessible. There are some important steps to consider. So first things first, we are going to see how to use tools to check PDF accessibility. Thank you, Lexi. So first things first, we do test for automated, manual, and we also always test with assistive technologies. There are automated accessibility checkers. First things first, in Acrobat Pro, if you have access to it, they do have a good accessibility tester and they are getting better year after year. If you don't have access to that, you can always go for Access PDF and Common Look. So those are two separate tools that specialize in PDF accessibility, in document accessibility. A big note here is that any test, any automated test would be against WCAG 2.0, a standard that could be considered outdated at this point since we are in WCAG 2.1, but PDFs were added in WCAG 2.0, so that is still considered legitimate. It is always good to keep an eye on that if you are using any type of accessibility tester, especially for Common Look. That does give you the option to pick what you're testing against. If you're using something like Acrobat Pro, you will be getting WCAG 2.0 right off the bat. You will not have an option to choose. Next slide, please. We're going to go to Acrobat Embedded Accessibility. So Acrobat is where PDFs are mostly read. You can go from choosing tools, heading straight for accessibility. There is an accessibility tool set that will be displayed in a secondary toolbar. you can select in the toolbar a full check or an accessibility check. In that toolbar, you'll also find how to auto tag a document. You will find reading order options, accessibility checks. You can identify form fields, and you can set up alternative text from there. It's worth mentioning again that you will need Acrobat Pro in order to run an accessibility check, so there is a cost to this. Next slide, please. We are going to create a workflow to make sure that you are drafting your drafting program can be used to its maximum capacity. So InDesign, for anyone who is a visual designer or who is a graphic designer, or Word if you're just making documents with a lot of text, they both have a tagging system. And using this tagging system, it can be made accessible. This file, let's say you have a file, it's a menu, you've made it, it's wonderful, you're working at a restaurant. However, if you do use tags beforehand, once you convert this menu into a PDF, the tags will transport. So you will already have a PDF that is at least readable by screen readers there. Once you have a PDF, you can go through it using assistive technologies, and this will give you an idea of what you have to correct, if everything is in the correct order for reading, if everything is tagged correctly, if all of the images have alternative text. Next slide, please. So we do have an example workflow here. So first things first, we go for content generation. This is the concept, this is the colors, this is anything that comes from picking images, anything like that. We go for our first review using a checklist. This can be made out of WCAG 2.0, or it can be from section 508. Again, it depends what you're authoring for. If you pass, great. If you don't, then you have to go back to the beginning. Pick again. Again, if you're using InDesign, you have your InDesign draft generator. Then you have your second draft. You go back, do your second accessibility review. Again, if you pass, good. If you don't, go back and start again. Now, this is where descriptions for complex media come in. This is where you will write your alternative text. This is where you will make sure that all your tables are tagged correctly. You can add a new provided content. It really depends if you have any images that needed to be changed and needed to be made accessible. But if the PDF is made correctly, let's say you export it as a PDF, then you have your final accessibility review either with Common Look or with a PDF automated checker. If it passes, then you're done and you're ready to publish. If it doesn't, then you have to go back. It is very circular, but we do always recommend breaking it up so it isn't so heavy. Next slide, please. So we have exported PDFs. You can make a PDF accessible from the start by ensuring that the file is accessible from the authoring software. These checks function great for very simple PDFs. However, complex PDFs that might contain several charts, several tables, several forms, etc., might need a second look for confirmation, especially if it's the first time you're making a table accessible, or if the table is non-standard, you might need to ask someone with experience. So next slide, please. We are going into what is OCR, or optical character recognition. This is something included in Adobe Pro again. So OCR can recognize scanned text and convert it into actual text. It can read the results in order to ensure that it is correct. However, we always recommend you read them again to make sure that the text isn't either mishandled, misspelled. Some names can get lost, or if the document scanned, if it is an old book and it has stains on it, or if there's something that is kind of wrong with the scan that you have, sometimes names and text can get lost. So we always recommend doing a manual check and making sure that everything is all right. This is usually how documents that are only images, so this can be scans of a very old textbook, can be made accessible. Next slide, please. So you need to set the correct reading order with tags. Every document needs to be tagged in order to be accessible. A tag will tell you what is text, what is an image, what is a form, what is a number. So these tags will basically guide a user through your document, through its content. Tags can be created by automation again. It isn't always right, so we always recommend to check your tagging system. If it occurs that the tag is incorrect, you can always change the tag name, or you can change the order it comes in through the tag tree. So tagging a document will create a tag tree. Representing the structure and the components, this tag tree is mostly perceived by screen readers. So this is where any type of screen readers will happen to find an error, or if there's an empty field there that you hadn't noticed. Again, check your tag tree and make sure that it is. A PDF must be tagged in order to be considered accessible. You can check if your PDF is accessible going through your preferences, and it will pop up there. Text can be edited using a tag panel. So you can go from choose view, show/hide, then the navigation panel, and then the content. Next slide, please. How do you edit a tag? Again, text can be edited using a tag panel. You can choose view, show/hide, navigate the panel, and then go for the content. You can manually drag and drop the tags, but we always recommend doing it with your keyboard, because sometimes when dragging and dropping, you can put a tag into a compound, into a chain that you don't want it in, and your reading order can be ruined. So be very careful when you're changing your tags. Next slide, please. We are talking about tagging tables. This one is a bit hard, and if you feel overwhelmed at first, don't worry, it does get better. You do require practice, and we always recommend either having a cheat sheet or an image that lets you know how to tag them, like the one we have for an example. So you can open the reading order tool from the right hand in the accessibility menu. It should be in the second order if you're only using your keyboard. You can find the incorrect tag tables within the document. This can be done by scrolling, or if you're already in the page that you want to tag, you can just text the number of the page and it should be tested there. You can select all elements that should be included in the table. So sometimes a lot of the table content can be excluded if you're tagging automatically. With a right click or with opening a menu, On selection, you can select the tag as table. We are going to talk about the example in the next slide. So next slide, please. Tagging tables, as I mentioned, is hard. So in each table, there should be a table tag, which once it is expanded will show the TR, which are for table rows, TH for table headers. This can be any type of cells and should only be for the first TR of the table, so for the first table row. You have TD, which should be the table data cells. These are the data where everything is set up. Now, the cells that span 2 or more rows or columns should use row span or col span, depending on where they are situated. So for tables that contain blank cells, sometimes are used for spaces to make it easier to read, especially if you're a visual reader. You may need to add a TD cell so that each row and column has the name some number of cells. This should make it easier for anyone who is using a screen reader to understand them. Next slide, please. So this is our example, and this is what you will find whenever you are tagging your tables. First things first, it is the table as a whole. Then it would be a table header row. So that is a TR and then a TH for each table header. Then there is a table row, and then there are the table data cells. Each one of them contain unique data. Again, and then again, we have a table row, a table data cell. So we have table, TR, TH, TR, TD, TR, and TD. This is why we always recommend having either a cheat sheet with what the table means and what every abbreviation means to make it easier, because remembering this can get hard, and sometimes remembering what is a table header, should this count as a table row or a table data, really does need some practice. And again, if your table is too complex and you're having issues, then ask help from a professional. Next slide, please. We're going to talk about tagging forms. A lot of people with disabilities will find that whenever you get a PDF with a form, you can't actually find the field for the form, so you don't know where to write. So when Acrobat adds a form field automatically, it also automatically adds a name and tooltip to each field based on text near the field. So if you're adding a name, then you have a namespace. You should review each tooltip. If you add a field manually, the tooltip will be blank. So with the Prepare Form tool group open, you can right-click, you can access the menu, the drop-down, and then you can add a form field and then choose Properties. Make sure that the text in the tooltip conveys all the information a screen reader needs to correct the complete field. So, and correct if it is not. So it might be empty. Next slide, please. We're going to give an example and a visual for this. So you must make sure that forms are tagged and are still functional after being tagged. Make sure that they are in the correct order in the tag tree. Then make sure that instructions are clear. do not rely on any visual input to complete it. So input like color and directions using right or left are not accessible. If you say that every form field that is red is required, that is not acceptable. A lot of people cannot interpret the color. They might be colorblind. A lot of people do not have the visual input to understand if anything is a different color, since screen readers will not let you know if anything is a different color. So things like if the required fields have a star next to them, then that is a good instruction. And then again, you need to make sure that the name, first field, and the tool tip are actually matched. So if their name is first name, the tooltip should be first name. Next slide, please. You need to set alternative text. We have spoken about how to write alternative text before, but in PDFs, it's important to consider that complex images like charts might need a description instead of alternative text. Additionally, always make sure that the alt text is accurate. Sometimes, if you're using automation, alternative text might already be set there and might be incorrect. Any decorative images should not have any alternative text at all and should be removed from the tag tree, so you can make them invisible. As an example, you will have a decorative figure checkbox for the options, and you will have a field to write your alternative text. We always recommend alternative text to be around 100 to 250 words if possible. But again, if you have a very complex image that has charts on it, then you might need to write a description under the image and not use the alternative text. Next slide, please. We want to test with color and contrast. So color and contrast rules are the same for any type of alternate media. So if you're using WCAG 2.1 or 2.0, section 508, you have the same rules. For regular text, let's say 12 points and up, then the color and contrast should be 4.5 to 1 in contrast ratio. For large text, which is around 16 points and up, the contrast should be 3 to 1 contrast ratio. So color and contrast rules still apply to all elements. This can be images that you want to describe. This can be any type of charts. It can be any type of decoration. It can be the color of the text that you have, the color of the background, any type of visual medium, any color that you include in your document should be by these guides. Next slide, please. So we have text resize. Any text must be resizable up to 200%. This is very easy to test. You can go and just open your document and try to see if you can zoom to 200. If any text is lost, or if the document comes out of order, or if it's hard to read then, or hard to understand, then your document is not accessible. As mentioned, regular text size is considered from 12 points as a minimum, and large text is from 16 or 18 points and up. Next slide, please. Do remember to remove your notes. This is important. Sometimes when you're navigating and when you're downloading a very important PDF from a very serious organization, you might find the edit notes in it, and screen readers can definitely find them. An accessible PDF cannot have notes left from previous reviews or embedded speaker notes. Screen readers can understand them, but it is common for them to cause a keyword trap. So they might actually cause a user to become stuck there and not be able to go on and read the document, and can be ignored. So sometimes there's just a skip. It really does depend on what type of screen reader your users have and what type of reader they're actually using to open your PDF. And they do not belong in the tag tree. So if you find any type of notes, you can remove them. Next slide, please. So we are getting to the final point of how to make your PDF accessible. You need to set up your bookmarks. This needs to be done as a penultimate step. If your tag tree was made correctly, then automated bookmarks should be accurate. But again, you need to compare them manually and always review them to make sure that everything is covered, that nothing is lost. You can edit your bookmarks, so keep that in mind if there's something that you want to draw special attention to, or something that you think this should be a title or a subtitle. There must be bookmarks from any document that is over 9 pages. So if your document reaches 9 pages, please add bookmarks. As I mentioned, this should be done penultimately because it takes information from your tag tree. If you're absolutely sure that all your tags are made correctly, then you should have no problems with your bookmarks. Next slide, please. Final step, you need to set up your metadata. Now, this is your title, your author, your subject, any type of keywords that you want, and your language. This is where you will make sure that every PDF is tagged, and you will see if it has any type of security measures. So documents over 5 pages must include a number page that can be added automatically, and metadata will always help with your SEO. So that is your search engine optimization. If you have everything set up for accessibility, search engines will basically find your document easily. You can find this in Adobe Acrobat. You go to File, you go to Properties, and then you go to Description. So for keywords, they can be anything. Taking an example from our chat, from this talk, it can be accessibility, it can be PDF itself, it can be any type of subject that you have, anything that calls to attention. So think of hashtags in social media. This is exactly the same. It will make, again, search engines have more access to you, and it will make finding the information easier. If you head to security and you want to make sure that everything is written correctly, then security should actually be lax. Nothing should have a password on it, and the document should be accessible there. If you go to advanced, you will actually find if the language is there, and it should be set up for English if your document is in English. It's always good to make sure and check those last steps. Next slide, please. So this is an offer from us to you to learn if your PDFs are accessible. You can send one PDF to Kim Alfonso DC. So that is K Alfonso ALFONSO DC @Results One LLC.com for a free automated audit. Then we will get back to you, let you know what's up, and we might actually have a meeting.